Yeah, here we go. Good evening, everyone. I am Reverend Charisma Jean-Marie, and I serve as the Director for Racial Justice Ministries at Scarritt Bennett Center. And I am so excited to bring you our second edition to our Women of Color Who Are Writing, Black Women Who Are Writing edition this evening. This evening, we have the Reverend Vahisha Hasan, who's here, who is the co-editor of her book, Recipient 2020, a Lenten Devotional for Dismantling White Supremacy. We have so much to talk about. So I am so grateful that you will join us this evening. Let me introduce you to my great colleague and friend, Anna Massey, who serves as our marketing manager here at Scarritt Bennett Center. And she'll be joining us later on this evening to facilitate the question and answer period. And let me go ahead and say, you are always invited to join us in the conversation. So please post your comments and your questions to the video comment section of our live stream this evening. We would love to be in conversation with you this evening. So come on in, share this live stream on your post, share, because there's just going to be some great information, great conversation this evening. So again, I want to say thank you for joining us, and we will get started. Anna, I will see you in a minute. I'm so grateful for this conversation this evening for so many reasons. One of the most important reasons is Black women are writing. Black women has always been writing. They've always been in the forefront, leading our world with a moral compass in terms of what it means to be a world that creates a beloved community for everyone. And so we started this series because we thought it was important to hear from Black women who are writing around racial justice work. And so I'm excited about our editor this evening, who has several book projects that she will share with you. And so let's get started. Reverend Vahisha, won't you share with us, tell us a little bit about you. We want to get to know you as a person. Tell us from the beginning. Tell us your genesis.
Oh, listen now, that's one of my favorite stories. Okay, so for most people who have known me longer than 5 minutes, my genesis story, you're just going to hear it again. So welcome, come on in. But I want to start with just saying thank you to you, Charisma. Thank you, Anna. Thank you to Scarritt Bennett for putting in both an investment of time and effort and work to do this very specific type of amplifying, uplifting, highlighting of melanated bodies of Black women, authors and editors, and folks that sometimes will be, don't have this type of format. And access. So thank you. Grateful to be here with all of you and all of my Facebook peeps. Hey, okay. Come in the comments. You know how I enjoy a good comment or two. So my genesis story, all of my stories begin with my mother, because she is my first love. She is the first loved me. We shared a whole body, right? My womb story is hers. All of our shared experiences started together. Her name is Violet. So I have a very healthy obsession with purple, okay? And her birthday is October 5th. So shout out to my mom in advance for her birthday. So just as a naming place, which, is a whole biblical thing that we appreciate, these naming stories. So my mother was contemplating a choice that many women face over whether to have me. So she is aware that she's pregnant. She's heavily under-resourced. At the time, she would be what people refer to today as houseless. So not necessarily on like a street level homelessness, but houseless in the sense that she didn't have a home, a stable home of her own. And beautiful, wonderful community people provided, stable housing for her. God bless all of those folks. I am grateful. And so in trying to make this decision, and I want to say up front that in my reverend melanated body, I honor the fact that people should be able to make that decision, and that decision should be theirs. You should have body autonomy over what happens with and in and for your body. So my mom is deliberating, sitting with this decision, but she's factoring that she's unstable financially, that she's under-resourced. What does she do? And at the time, she wouldn't have, particularly described herself as a religious person, but felt very spiritual and had like this conversation with God. So she's sitting on a potty, which she hates that I tell. So we've all had this potty revelations. If you haven't, you're not doing the potty right. That's all I'm saying. So she's sitting on the potty and she began to cry and cry out to God. And she says, God, what should I do? I don't have anything of my own, having escaped what was a turbulent marriage, moved several states over to be safe and to start life anew. I don't have my own house. I don't have anything. She asked God, what could I possibly give a child? I don't have anything myself. And in the midst of her tears, she says she hears the voice of God say, give her life. Give her life. So in that moment, she knew that I was going to be a girl. And she named me Vahisha, which is Arabic for life, means life. And she got that name from back when pageants were segregated. There was a Miss Black America whose name was Vahisha, and in her campaign talked about that. So she named me life. My middle name is Nabiha. It means noble prophet. And my last name is Hasan. All three are Arabic, and it means to make life better. So in this naming moment, my mother and God were very clear on who I was to be in the world. And I have just ever since then attempted to seek out ways to do that. That has been my life's path. My mom would say early on, did you speak life today? Even if it was the playground. Right? Mom, can I go out and do such and such? Are you going to make noble decisions out there, Nabiha? Right? I come back home from something. What did you make better? I got in the most trouble from not making something better. If I made something worse, woo, child, that's not allowable in the Hasan household. And she also changed her last name to Hasan, saying that by giving me life, was going to make her life better, and also we were going to make the world better. So we're the only two Hasans in the family. She's currently remarried, so she's also a Winstead, Hasan Winstead now, and I have an amazing D-dad who has created a really beautiful corrective kind of father experience for me. So that's my genesis. That is my beginnings. From there, I had lots of early school experiences of oppression, of support, right? So we, not kind of a one note. So I've experienced everything from, I had teachers call me a hoodlum. I had a battle of the books advisor who kept trying to put a group of Black girls, spread us out so that we could work with the other white teams so that we could be, this is what she said, successful. So I staged my first walkout protest in junior high school. I staged a not so nice protest in elementary school with a white teacher who was just very oppressive about my name and every other thing. So these are experiences that shaped me along the way. And then I also had Black teachers. I was able to experience Black teachers early on who made sure to know that I was beautiful and wonderful and brilliant, and also held boundaries. Like, this is how you need to show up in the world, because these folks ain't for you. Right? And then went to Chapel Hill for undergrad. Oh, let me not skip. I was part of the International Baccalaureate program in high school, which was very eye-opening. So this was an international curriculum. So children in Spain and France and America and Italy all had the exact same curriculum and took the exact same kind of assessments at the end of high school. So that was a very interesting aspect to education, very different track than I think some people get. So it gave me a lens of like, our very first class was TOK, Theory of Knowledge. How do we think? So I was given, here's the deal, I was given permission and tools very, very early on to question and to wonder and to not just have an answer, but how did I arrive at that answer and how did I justify that answer, right? And so it very, very wonderful academic experience. Undergraduate at Chapel Hill, University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, woo woo. And then I went to grad school, and I did communication, majored in communication studies there with an emphasis on interpersonal, how we relate to each other, how we convey value and meaning in spoken and unspoken ways, in ways of communication. And then Gardner-Webb University, also in North Carolina, and did a dual master's in divinity and in mental health counseling and an education specialist, which is just a designation that I can teach what I learned, right, in those disciplines. Is there more? I can talk all day. Listen, lead me, because I'll be like, and then my grandma, both my grandmas are still living. I'm blessed to have both grandmas. I'm blessed to have these amazing aunts and uncles that I still have a room in my Aunt Janice's house right now, right? And my Aunt Sia took me to visit my grandmother every summer, and my maternal grandmother put me in 50-11 summer camps all summer long, things my single parent mother would never have been able to pay for or access. My paternal grandmother would come pick me up once a month and take me to church. So many things. And my mother's side is largely Baha'i, of the Baha'i faith, Catholic, Christian, Muslim, the Nation of Islam. And then my dad's side is mostly Baptist, not Southern Baptist, Baptist in the South. And then
because there's a difference. You are a mess.
Right. And then my D-dad, which is Daryl Winstead, my stepdad, who I call D-dad, family is mostly, listen, don't get him started about New York. Okay. So that's all I'm going to say. And he's the chef and he feeds us, and I can't wait to see him. So it took a whole lot of people to nurture me. There is no such thing as the path that I made on my own. It took the whole village upon village.
Yeah. What I love about your Genesis story is it brings me back to the African proverb that says it takes a village to raise a child, and it shows up even now in your passion for people, and the ways in which you show up in the world. So praise God for your mom who had that conversation with God that led you here tonight. Really excited about getting into the book. But before we go there, I'd like you to talk a little bit more about your career path. How did you get to become, this fierce leader in the community, wearing many different hats? And I want you to talk a little bit also about your work you do with mental health as it relates to activism, because I think that's one of the parts of the conversation that's not often amplified. And so talk a little bit about that.
Okay, so when I did the dual at Gardner-Webb, I was the only fool at the time who was like, oh, I'm gonna work full time, have a whole husband at the time, and go do 2.5 master's degrees. It's fine. So in doing so, I was really supported by the university though, and was chosen to be one of the speakers for commencement, and pulled in, several different kind of conversations, like what made you choose this path and how would this be helpful for other students? You know how they do. So I was a poster kid, an adult poster child. And so I met at the time Dr. Joseph Caldwell, well, I didn't meet at the time, but Dr. Joseph Caldwell, who later became the president of MCUTS, which is Memphis College for Urban and Theological Studies in Memphis, Tennessee. He learned about me in that context because he was a staff member he was a director of a program at Gardner-Webb. And then we ended up at Wild Goose Festival, which is this very interesting Christian festival, progressive Christian festival, supposedly. We can talk about that in a different way. But we can have a different conversation about that. That's a whole different. So, but met him and his lovely wife, Marva. They were tabling for the university. We ended up talking. He put together that I was like that person from that. And he built out a program as the president of the institution, built out this amazing degree program and wanted me to come in and write it and do it. So I went in and we had a human services degree program 3 years ago. And I wrote with not a lot of sleep, I wrote the degree program for applied psychology, of undergraduate, a bachelor's in applied psychology, in this theological context, though, right? So it was amazing, and so that duality, that dualness of living into a faith body and then living into this wellness context. So that was, these two disciplines were, my life. And so that's career-wise, that's kind of how I matriculated through that. So I was in Memphis for 3 years, moved from Charlotte to Asheville, ultimately to Memphis for 3 years to do that. And now I am sitting in my brand new office, which is why I have no pictures or anything up at the moment, because when does that happen? I'm sitting at American Baptist College in Nashville, Tennessee. Another president, listen, y'all presidents ain't playing out here. They like, we're gonna go get these people. We need to do this work. So President Reverend Dr. Forrest Harris, I met him at the Public Theology Racial Justice Collaborative Institute for Scholar Activists at Vanderbilt under direction of Reverend Dr. Teresa Smallwood. And I did a presentation, though, on movement, that there is this whole movement blueprint. There's a whole set of Southerners that are doing radical revolutionary movement and social change liberatory work that already showed us the way, right? And not in theory, but in practice. So I gave out these blueprints and was like, this is what the South is doing. And this is why there are wins happening in the ways that they are happening. And he was like, what? So he began to recruit me because apparently the institution was in the process of designing a SEAL program. So at this stage, it's a SEAL initiative, and SEAL stands for Social Justice, Equity, Advocacy, and Leadership. So I am now the director of the SEAL initiative at American Baptist College, where I'm working on developing it into a way that we both seal the school, right? So as an institution, how are we living by these principles? How are we doing this in our curriculum with our students? How do we produce sealed students, if you will? And then how are we moving in the world and in community in a sealed way with these principles? So those are the areas and aspects that I'm moving and navigating in this present day. Did that answer it? Oh no, so let me get to the mental health part. Well, part of it with that curriculum. So in writing this applied psychology curriculum, right, I'm looking at resources and textbooks and first sources and all these different things. And I've been consistently in this faith body, well, at least since 2002. I didn't come to the Lord early, saints. So since 2002 is when I entered. I was mostly Baha'i as a child and a youth. And then being in this faith body, and then being actively and involved and engaged in social change ever since I was young. My other aunt, Binta, who is an amazing artist and just beautiful in expression of liberation, has always taken me to everything you could possibly think of that art can be expressed and used in ways that Black folks express themselves in terms of movement and social change, even as a kid, right? So in all of this work, doing all of these things. And so it's like, how do I have this faith portion, I have this mental health portion, I have this social justice portion. And then being from Charlotte, Kiefer Mott Scott was murdered by Charlotte Police Department. And we are then in our uprising moment. And it wasn't like it was the first time that we launched bad. Don't get me wrong. This ain't the first Black person that was murdered, right? But this was the uprising moment in this very iteration of social change. And so Out of a Church became one of the anchoring places of organizing. And in conjunction with Black Lives Matter chapter there and Surge, the Showing Up for Racial Justice, lots of organizing happened out of a church, not necessarily for faith folks, right? And so, yeah, I knew the social justice pastor at the time and his partner, and we did the dang thing, right? So this becomes the moment. So now I'm organizing where the water is going to go, where the medics are going to have their supplies. Like I'm going through and making signs, moving in an organizer way. But because of my particular intersection, I'm like, well, where's the healing space? So I made healing space, right? And so we're going to have 24-hour childcare. And we're also going to have 24-hour medics, and we're also going to have 24-hour healers, right? So we had folks who, from all different types of healing modalities, volunteered their time to come do somatics, do body work, do Reiki, do massages, do psychotherapy, whatever, however they rolled as healers. And so that was one of the first times I got to organize and practice that intersection and set it up the way that I thought that it should look, right? And I did that in conjunction with a lot of people, again, not in a lone place, right? And so it was amazing to seamlessly, you got somebody screaming and getting contacts out because they've been tear gas and pepper sprayed, meeting their bodily needs. I mean, people are burned, bodies, things are happening. How do you move them to helping their physical, addressing their physical, to then addressing their emotional? Because look what they just went through. Look what they just experienced. And for them to be willing to go through that and then go back out there and do it again. All in the name of freedom, all in the name of justice, all in the name of Black Lives Matter, all in the name is no more killing, stop killing us. Right?
Yeah.
So that became the deal. So that was I think it was like 2016. So now present day, I'm a core member of TRAC, which is the Trauma Response and Crisis Care, and doing that with some lovely other melanated bodies. And so we are now training and building up like healers and clinicians. People are licensed, not licensed, different modalities of healing. But what does it look like to be in that situated body as a healer, but to have movement analysis, to have actual relationships with movement folk, right? So it's not enough to be like, I'm a therapist, but if, Raheem don't know you, Raheem ain't talking to you. So how do you have both the analysis and relationships and be able to do that meets that community's needs, that meet activist needs in that way? And so there becomes that other intersection for me. And it's one of my favorite things to do. When I was in school, I didn't know why I was so drawn to crisis work. So drawn to crisis work because there was a crisis waiting for me in movement places that I would be particularly suited and gifted to address and care about, as you said, passionately.
Yeah. So let me say thank you for who you are and how you show up in the world and what you contribute to the movement, because I think oftentimes we forget that the people on the streets are in crisis, right? And the media is not going to tell that part of the story, right?
Oh no, they just busting up
They're
buildings.
looting and they're rude and this and that, right? But the folks on the streets, they're there in crisis. And what does it mean? Right. And what does it mean to offer them healing of their bodies, their minds, and spirit in one space? And to gear them back up to go back out.
Because we need them.
Because we need them. That's right. So speaking of crisis, we're in the middle of so many different crises. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I'm tired of being tired. I'm enraged. And I want to lift up, Black women can't be talking and naming names the way you were naming. I love your beautiful story of your naming process. But we can't name ourselves and not name our beloved sister who was killed, who was murdered by the hand of police, right there in her home, Breonna Taylor. So I want to lift up and name Breonna Taylor, and talk a little bit about that. What does it mean for you as a Black woman to hear the story of Breonna Taylor, and how are you sitting with it? Talk to us a little bit about that. How are you sitting with all that's happened and what's happening even now? I mean, for me, the story just gets worse and worse and worse the more it
Unfolding worseness.
and it becomes for me, the words of Malcolm X, that says the most unprotected, disrespectful, person, is the Black woman. And so that those words become real for me as it relates to, Breonna Taylor. Even the heartbreak of hearing Black men say, right, and try to compare, right, the Breonna Taylor's case to the George Floyd's case, this, unproductive, rhetoric around what's worse and what's not, the ways the ways we are set up to compare trauma, that's so unfair, that often put Black women on the bottom, feed. So talk to us a little bit about how are you sitting with, the Breonna Taylor's case there in Louisville, Kentucky.
So I just had to take a deep breath even to answer that, because just naming it, right? Tense, my body totally tensed up, blood vessels constricted, right? Like all of these things begin to happen, in my body. And so I would name it as an erosion
Mm,
of safety. And I would go further to say an erosion of a sense of safety,
mm,
because I had a perception of safety that
mm,
was never true. That
mm.
was never true. And so as a child, my mother would say, you know, you get lost, Vahisha, you go find a police officer. So this is what I thought safety looked like. And so we believed, in that this aspect of safety, of serving and protecting, that there was somebody that you could identify by a uniform that would help you
Yeah.
when you were not safe. And this is what I thought. And that has eroded and eroded and eroded and eroded. And Sandra Bland was the tipping point for me,
Mm,
actually. And
yeah.
so for her to be in her automobile on a way to what would be deemed by like white society as a capitalistic enterprise, right? Going to get this job,
That's right.
going to make this money. Ain't that what you say we're supposed to do? And to be stopped, for whatever reason, that her tail light was out, but then the way that she was stopped, when you did that Malcolm X quote about being disrespected
That's
and
right.
unprotected, right? And so the way that she was spoken to, the way she was treated in that exchange, and she, out of a very valid place, responded to that like, no, no, I'm not going to put my cigarette out that you didn't pay for. Give me
Mhm.
my ticket and I'll go about my way. And I am that person. So I may not have been smoking at the time. I don't smoke, right? That might not have been my context,
Mhm.
but I don't care what it was. I wasn't gonna get off my phone. I wasn't gonna stop eating my Twizzlers. I would like, you don't get to dictate in this moment what I'm doing that has nothing directly related to you giving me some kind of traffic violation, right? And so for that to escalate into her death under the most suspicious, circumstances ever, that was the end of my erosion, to the extent that my best friend, Melissa, McDaniel, yeah, I said your whole name. I'm sorry, I love you. Um, one of my best friends, is a dance teacher, dance instructor, and she came out after like a competition, and it was at night. When she went in, her car was fine. She came out at night, one of her tail lights was out.
Mm,
And she sat in the car and bawled
mm,
because she's in a rural, remote area and needing to drive back to Charlotte. She called me. We cried tears. and talked her all the way home and had to make a plan. I mean, I had to write down information. Like, I actually recorded her saying, I did not kill myself, right? Like, this was to drive home because she came outside and her car was in a condition that she didn't go inside with. So this wasn't, oh, irresponsible, and oh, you didn't, all of this fault finding that happens. So this Black woman had to cry home with another Black woman. And when she got in her house, we cried again. Like, this is the level of erosion that we deal with. And so here we are. And so we're not safe in the car. And then we're not safe playing with our nephew. And then we're not safe in the bed sleeping. So there is no safe. I used to say in anti-racist trainings all the time, I got myself on tape saying, I only feel safe at home. I only feel like I don't have to hold whiteness at home. My house is the only sacred sanctuary that I have where I can be fully Black, fully seen, fully. Now that it's gone, it's gone. And I wasn't safe then when I was saying it, but for it to be exemplified this way and highlighted in such a way. Erosion. I am not safe. You are not safe. All melanated bodies are not safe. And that's not okay. It's not okay. And I don't have time or energy to spend on oppression Olympics, on who the what's the worst or whatever. They're killing all of us. So I don't care what genitals it come with. I don't care what body claiming identities in that way, right? Which makes all the more reason that trans bodies, listen, if you're gonna sit and argue whether these male identified bodies, then you should understand why all the bodies matter, why all of the Black lives matter. Ain't no separation of which of the Black lives matter and do not matter. And if you come to a common denominator place, who is the most vulnerable Black body that we have? And it's a trans Black body. So don't tell me there is no award in the oppression Olympics that I am interested in.
That's right.
So how are we gonna keep us safe? How are we gonna hold the society accountable? And how are we gonna go get this freedom?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I want to move to this book. We could stay there for a whole while, but I don't want us to this book. And part of why I'm excited about this conversation about the book is because, right now, for so many people, this season, this moment, this time feels like there is no hope. If we get caught up in media, social media and what the news is talking, if we get caught up in all of this, right? And I have to be honest with you to say, I sit in that space too. I'm consistently asking the question in this hour, where are you, God? Where are you? Where is hope? What does justice looks like? Because for me as a Black woman, I just don't, it's never been realized in my lifetime, it feels, right? And so what does justice look like? And who gets it, right? Who gets justice? Where is God? What does justice, what does hope look like? And so I really appreciate your book, Recipiscence. Did I say that right?
Nope. Y'all, she practiced before we started.
Said it right all the other times. And
all the times. You did.
Right. Come on and tell me the name.
You were so close, though. You were so close.
Right.
It's a rough word. I know.
Tell us the name of your book.
It's Recipiscence.
Recipiscence. See, I had it right the very other times. But before, tell us what led you, a Black woman, to come up with this idea to edit a book like this? What calls women to write, Black women to write?
So ironically, because this book is co-edited, and my co-editor is a beautiful white queer woman out of Oakland, California. So the story of it, so I can't say that the idea was mine, but I definitely poured a whole bunch of random Black Vahishanness all over it. And this is how. So Nicola Torbett is an amazing faith-rooted organizer, who I just love and value and respect so much. Like, and she called me her book baby mama, and it has been the best moniker I think I have ever had since then. And we were on a call years ago, I think 2015 maybe, about defunding police, things that people are saying in common day language now, which is so weird, right? Defunding police, and specifically churches divesting from policing in their institutions. Like, what does that look like? And so at the very end of the call, she says, this was with Surge Faith, which is a grouping of showing up for racial justice, white folks organizing white folks. And she says at the very end, hey y'all, I'm thinking about, doing a Lenten devotional on dismantling white supremacy. Anybody want to help me with that? What? So we're on this Zoom. I made the exact same face I just made right now. I got really excited. I took over the whole conversation. The meeting was supposed to be over. And all of my wheels started spinning and all this stuff. And so everybody got excited because I was so excited. So set up a time to speak to Nicola later. And so she lays out her vision. She's like, hey, I just want to do like a little, kind of like a little pamphlet. And like, we write some devotionals and take some of the scriptures and do some exegetical work, and how, what this can look like, how scriptures have been used to oppress, but how they can also like liberate, right? So how do we dismantle white supremacy with our sacred texts? Like, we ain't even got to go get nothing else.
Right.
It's already right here. And I was like, yes. But I was like, but let's not just do us. Let's bring in voices, right? Let's bring in more voices. So we did a really big, huge reach out to folks all over the country. I love and know I'm blessed with, I have that tribe of family and friendship and kind of tighter maybe community, but then I have a broader community of people who just love me and support me, and I reciprocate in so many ways. And out of those relationships, we reached out to like 150 people and were able to get people to write every day for all 40 days of Lent and Holy Week. Do just that. But specifically, like when we sent, right, the email sent out was, how do you come from this context of a melanated Jesus who was murdered by the state? And we are sitting in a time still where Black and brown people are being murdered by the state constantly. So we are in this perpetual Friday, is what I talk about in the foreword, I think, every year, because this is the 3rd edition of the book. So Black and brown folks are in a perpetual Friday. So to your point, are we gonna have a perpetual Saturday?
Yeah.
When is our great getting up morning? When do we rise? What's our early on the 3rd day? Right. Right? Where is that? Where is that for Black and brown people, specifically in the context of America? And so that's the way that people came at the text and did that in ways of, how do you both take that text to dismantle white supremacy, which is deeply also embedded in Western Christianity, right? And then also, how can you use the text to liberate?
Yeah.
There's deep liberation available in these texts. And so a both and. So it starts to answer some of those whys. And part of the reason we don't know the whys is because we've been given white theology in seminaries. We've been given white preaching in churches, and it don't care whether white supremacy don't care the vehicle. White supremacy is no respecter of persons. So white supremacy can show up in Black bodies, white bodies, spectrum of melanated bodies, all throughout. Right. So how do we preach and teach better? Because we've done more exegetical work, because we've done social context, because we have studied some kind of Black liberation theology, because we actually know what womanist is and who were the founders of womanism and the current thought content leaders in that, right? So how do we do that in a way that we show that there is liberation available? And that's what happened. So that was, I think, our first recipients was 2018, different set of writers for 2019, and then a different set for 2020. And like I said, we had never written anything before. I had never published a thing before. This was going to be a self-published work, but I reached out to one of my comrades, Reverend Michael McBride, and was like, Mike, I'm writing this book and don't nobody know me. Will you write? Will you write one of these devotionals? Because he at least had like a recognizable name, right? That people would at least take the book seriously, right? But also the point was to uplift and amplify people who don't have platforms, people who are just doing the work in their local communities. So you may not know about them, but that doesn't mean that they're not doing deep liberatory work where they are.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. I'm really loving this title of the book and the definition as you have it here in the foreword that you wrote. Recipients. Did I say that right?
Recipients.
Recipient. Why I had it right before. Recipient is defined as a change of mind or heart, reformation, a return to a sane, sound, or corrected view or position. Now that will preach today.
Hello? Won't it preach?
I mean, it will preach for real, for real. And part of what I was thinking about that definition, particularly in this election season, how I do think there are many people who is in that middle road, who feels like they have been part of a particular party for so long, all their lives. And here now they're having a cognitive dissonance experience, right? Mm-hmm. They're having this middle road experience where they feel like if they choose something else, it would be a betrayal of something. But I think it's important for us to have a conversation about the power of changing one's mind, right? To evolve, because the reality is, particularly in this country, racism is in the DNA. And so every person, including Black folks, right? We all grew up in a kind of culture that socialized us, right? To prioritize one's being over the other, whether it's race, whether it's gender, whether it's sexual orientation. We are all socialized to think that way. And at some point in our journey, right, there ought to be a change of mind experience. So talk a little bit more about that, particularly for the viewer who's watching, right, who might be in that middle road. Talk a little bit about the importance of one, changing our minds, particularly around, right, social issues that we're seeing today, particularly around this election season.
So I'm gonna start high level, just because this election makes my nervous system just wrecked. But one of the commentaries, Trevor Noah was talking on his reaction to the debate last night, and was like, we need a fact checker for the debate, right? Like in real time though, so that you can't just put out every lie, every nuanced version of the thing that is not accurate. Like, so what does that look like? And so I think recipients really serves as some fact checking. Some fact checking of that socialization that you're talking about, of that conditioning. What if you ask a deeper question? You want to stump? Let me tell you something. You want to stump a very hard pressed believer, and I'm talking about believer in whatever. Right. You ask questions of depth, and they're not going to know what to do, because depth is not covered in Vacation Bible School, right? Often the depth is not covered in some of these spaces and places, or the depth comes within the scope of the same socialization. So they're just repeating what they're told without a deeper exploration of that inside. When I was in seminary, the class that had the highest dropout rate, people left the whole program after Christian ethics. Now, if you can make it through Old Testament and New Testament, let me tell you something, 1 and 2, Greek and Hebrew, but Christian ethics is what took me out. I really want you to think about that.
Yeah, come on. Because
they could not apply.
That's right.
They could not apply the faith in a way that they could make sense of it.
Yeah. And
they were not prepared to do that. They were not prepared to sit in a space that didn't just repeat what they knew, that didn't just honor what they had been told. They didn't know what to do with that. Yeah. In a real and applicable way. So here we have recipients that offers that. So it is a Lenten devotional. So you can walk through the lectionary during those specific days, but it's applicable anytime, because we preach all of these texts all year, all the time, depending on what the context is. And so when people have these core beliefs, right? Just even from a psychological standpoint,
Yeah.
you start knocking up against people's core beliefs, they're ready to box you out.
Listen.
Because it is deeply tied. Like you said, like, I mean, in that Kendrick Lamar DNA way, that we don't have a double helix at this point. We got a triple helix. And now we are recognizing we have a quadruple helix. So we got the 2 DNA strands that come from the biology of our parents. But now we got this faith strand and this nationalist strand that has attempted to hijack in a cancer-like way all the other strands. So here we are. But the Bible is, I don't want, it bothers folks to say nothing more, but in its state is a depiction, is a journeying of God interacting with God's creation.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what it is. God interacting with God's creation. So the Bible did not stop at Revelation, right? Like that's not, God is still interacting with God's image bearers right now, today. This is still happening. And some of those contexts, remember when God would change people's names? Back to the naming. You started off with a name, but there would be a name change.
That's right.
And so that's the recipients.
Yeah.
There is precedence.
Yeah.
There is precedence for this change. This change is available to you.
Yeah.
It may be scary. Them biblical folks were scared. You think Sarah wanted to be Sarah?
Come on.
Abram wanted to be Abraham, right? Like,
I mean, even in
it came with great responsibility. It came with great responsibility, great purposing, and they now had to live life with this newness, in this newness, and that's the change.
Yeah. Yeah. As you were talking, I was thinking about even in the Gospels where Jesus is encountered by this mother, right, who comes pleading on behalf of her daughter. And even in that interaction, Jesus changes his mind, right? And so when Jesus can change his mind, changes his whole mission, changes his whole understanding of who he is and why he is, right?
But you have to accept that Jesus was fully human.
That's right.
And fully divine to even honor that Jesus could.
That's right. Yeah.
That this was a human mind that Jesus chose to put in this human form that could change. Same synapses, same neurotransmitters, like the same thing. And that's the deal. That's the deal.
Right. Yeah, because I think that's where we are as a country, right? We're at a crossroads right now. And we sit in, I say two, but this morning I was listening to some commentary that talks about 3 pandemics, right? So we have the health, COVID-19 pandemic, we have the uprise with race, and then also the pandemic of the economy, right? So we're really just at a crossroads right now as a country in a very important year, the election year, the census, right? And I think there's so many people who are asking the question, what does it mean to be an American, right? I know I ask that question every day as a Black woman, right? That I, as a Black woman, can be killed in my own house and walls get justice, right? The walls of my neighbor's house, right?
The potential of harm is more important than the actual harm that happened because it happened to a Black body.
That's right. That's right. And so I really appreciate you lifting up this idea of the journey of changing one's mind, because I do think there are many who are at that crossroads. So let's talk a little bit about some of the writings, some of the contributors of the book. You talked about Michael McBride, who is a beloved brother in the movement, who's doing a lot of amazing things. But who else can we find in the book who co-labor with you with this book?
So Michael McBride was in the first edition, so that was the 2018 edition. Some of my own beloved pastor, who I love with my whole heart, Dr. Gina Stewart, was in. Yes, listen now. If you don't know, now you know. No. She was in the 2019 edition, and then but let me speak about the folks who labored all the way through.
Yeah.
So we have folks who responded to the call when they only responded because they knew us, right? They only responded because I was in direct, beloved relationship with them. And part of that came out of Princeton has a fellowship program called the Public Theology, and that's Vanderbilt. I get them all mixed up at this point. But BTLI, which is a Black Theological Leadership Institute. There we go. Okay, so there were 50 folks that came from all around the country and applied to this fellowship. And the year that I went, the theme was preaching in a protest era. So these were your revolutionary folk who weren't scared to say things, do this type of exegetical work. And so that happened the year of the first book. And so I was able to immediately lean into folks who had a shared lens, a shared exegesis, and also were doing deep, beautiful work in the world. And so folks like Zan West, who heavily involved with BLM at the time in Oakland and came from revolutionaries, right? And then who is now over One Life Institute, and then Wavette Blair Lavallee, who is a pastor in Texas, who also is an author and editor in her own right. And folks like, who are some, let me give you my favorite movement folk. Oh my goodness. Now it took 3 years. Because I'm about to clown her, and she knows what's coming. It took 3 years, because she told me every year she was going to write in the book. But Ashley Woodard Henderson, who is the director, one of the co-executive directors of the Highlander Center, Highlander Research and Education Center, a historical place of movement, who is also doing deep revolutionary work in the world today. One of the authors I had, and it kind of crosses some spectrums, like Only Love is one of the folks who wrote, and she's a Hebrew, Hebrew Israelite, I believe. And then just different folks who came to the text in different ways. And it was amazing and astounding. So those are some of the folks that I would lift up. Ashley's co-executive director, Alan, was also Alan Maxwell Steele. He was in 2019 version. So you got all 3 years, but listen, it's some dope folks in here. Dr. Teresa Smallwood is in here this year. Let me tell you something. You sit long enough and talk to Teresa Smallwood, you'll get your whole theological life, okay? And you'll be like, oh, okay, now I know how to go be a game changer, world changer. Yes, ma'am. Right? So she's in there. Marvin K. White is this amazing poet. You just listen to his poetry and to his expression. A whole different thing. Take a read of that.
Yeah. For the person who's watching who says, well, why should I get this book? Share with them in terms of why do you think this book is not only necessary, but relevant today? Why should our viewers get this book today?
Absolutely. The first reason is because it's a counter narrative, right? So there is a dominant narrative that claims a Jesus and claims a Christianity like it only belongs to white folk, to conservative white folks whose interests are individualistic and Western rugged individualism, right? A nationalism without compromise. That's the dominant narrative, right? There are people and heartbeats deeply invested in God and our relationship with God and creation and land and all of the different things, who don't live this way.
Yeah.
Who don't love this way, who don't deny this way, who do not oppress this way, and who are deeply presently active in making the world better, in bringing about social change, in collective liberation, which is a liberation that says that there is enough freedom for everyone.
That's right.
And white folks need to get free in a different way that Black folks need to get free, in a different way that brown folks need to get free. But there is freedom to be had, and you need to go get it. And faith is a tool. Faith can be a tool of that freedom and of that liberatory work. And if you didn't go to seminary yourself, right? If you didn't have a lot of money and access and privilege to be able to go take out a big A student loan and go do all of this, right? Or if you live in a rural place or a closed-minded place or wherever you are and you are not getting this counter narrative. You are not in spaces and places that are honoring you or a faith, a change, a return, a reformation that is possible, then you can start here. This is your place that you can start. And it's done in such a way that, like, oh my goodness, all these people have already done all of this work for me, right? They have read the text in these ways. They have done the study. They have presented it. And so this can begin to be a blueprint. So when you have those hard conversations with people, but you don't know how to talk about it in a faith context because all of your faith leanings have not prepared you, have not equipped you, and have, if anything, have limited you, then you now have words. You now have language, and you now have access to a tribe of people who have read more and are doing better. Read more and are doing a better version of what is possible in Christian faith. That is the why. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be Lent to do that, but there is freedom available in every page. These people are doing their own wrestling and they coming out with a limp, but they sharing it with you. There's lived experiences here. There is having fallen down, having gotten back up in the work. Yeah, it's invaluable. It's invaluable. And I will name, if you know, because reading is a lot, it's 3 books. There are podcast series that go with this, and you can meet these people. So I've done a podcast with as many authors of the contributors as possible, and that's available on the Transform Network podcast. All of these people, you can read their work and then actually learn about them in their context. If you are in Oakland, but you don't know these deeply revolutionary folk, listen to the podcast, go find them. Go learn about what they're doing, support the work, get involved. So many different reasons, right? Can help you, can make you not feel alone, can give you language, but can also connect you to how you can be active. This is not a book. Don't go do no book study. Read the book by all means. Right. Yes. But then move. Yeah. Then move in what you have read. Then act. Because that's the other reason. We need you. Mm-hmm. We are tired, as Sharissana said. Now, we're not going to stop, but we are tired. That's and right. We need every activated person who is ready to do deeply liberatory work. And whether you're doing it in your living room, across the table with your own family, so they adjust their vote and stop voting for policies that support white supremacy, for policies that result in justified killings of Black and brown people. That's right. That's right. Whether you're doing that in your church, whether you're doing that in your community, do you know your neighbor? Mm-hmm. Go talk to somebody, right? And now you have language, and now you have people. Yeah. You know, my motto this year, my motto's always, but it's pushing this year is, you know, every vote, every last one of our votes impact the least of these. The least of these. When you vote, when you go to the polls and you cast your vote, that vote has an impact, not just for you. It's not just about what your opinion is or what you want. It's like the mask. It's just like the mask. It's both for you and it's for someone else. Neighbor, that's right. And for your neighbor, that's right. I want to say thank you so much. Come on and put your book up so we both can put it up. But the links for those who are watching, the links to the book, the links to the podcast, the link to even find Vahisha is all there in our comment section. The main one that'll get you to anywhere is www.movementandfaith.com. So that'll platform you to everything. Yes, all of those links are in our comment sections. Listen, beloved, go and get this book. For those of us who are tired, for those of us who's angry, for those of us who are asking the question, where is God? There is hope. There is a balm in Gilead. Listen. There is hope in the midst of all of this chaos. And for those of us who are stuck in the middle road, who's trying to figure out who they want to be,
who's in that midst, in that journey of changing my mind journey. And it hurts. Listen, to change your mind, to shift your thinking, to evolve into something else is a painful journey. But it's a reality of what it means to be a human being. What it means to be a human being. You don't have to go through the journey alone. There are resources available to you because Black women are writing and they're editing books too. So we're so excited for this edition. This resource is available on our website and all of our social media platforms. We've shared it all month long, and we're just so grateful to be in conversation with Reverend Vahisha Hasan this evening. We didn't have any questions from our audience, but we've had a lot of great comments. You have a whole chorus shouting you out. We want to give a big shout out to Reverend Dr. Forrest Harris, who's on with us, and he gave you a big old shout out. He said,
"That's my president, y'all."
He said, glad to have this womanist prophetic liberatory voice here in Nashville at American Baptist College. And I want to echo that. We're excited to have you. We need you in Nashville, not just American Baptist College, in Nashville. But we need you at American Baptist College too. And so we're just so excited to have you. We're so grateful that you are here in Nashville. I already told you, I'm just letting you settle. This is about to be on and popping in a minute. I'm just letting you settle. You see, I haven't bothered you yet, but it's coming. I'm warning you.
I am ready and not ready all at the same time.
It's coming. It's coming. Thank you so much. I want to give you a moment to share with our viewers this evening. Just share a word of hope. Again, we are in the midst of the Saturday experience. This country is in Saturday. The Black community in this country, but I would go ahead and say, as I hear my sister Esther all the way in Ghana, who consistently reminds me, Esther Armand with the Emotional Justice.
That emotional justice got me going.
Emotional Justice Institute. She consistently reminds me that this is a fight globally. This is not just in this country. This is an uprise. This is a work that we must do globally. And so for those who are watching us, I want to offer you the opportunity to share a word of hope, to help us to reimagine what it means to be human, what it means to be an American, what it means to be in this world where we're sitting in the midst of many different pandemics. We're in the midst of an election year. If you have not filled out your census, we encourage you to do that. Again, filling out the census is about the resources, not just for you and your household, but the resources in the community. Being registered to vote and going to vote is not just about you, it's about the least of these, it's about your neighbors. For those of, so I want, I got to put those plugs in, right? I got to put those plugs in. October 5th is the deadline to register to vote. We want to encourage you to go out to vote. But I want to pass the mic to you again, Vahisha, as we leave this space. If you would offer a word, your final words to our viewers this evening that are watching, would you share a word for us, a word of hope, a word that reminds us that while we sit in Saturday, Sunday is coming.
Thank you again, Charisma and Scarritt Bennett Center, for having me, for making this kind of space available for folks like me who are doing the best we can in the world, right? I'm grateful for this time, grateful for this opportunity. And I've said it in a couple of different ways. With this pandemic, this triple threat pandemic that you've named, one of the aspects of it is that we are not able to hold each other the same. The natural ways that we come to tables and gather, the natural way over food, right? The natural ways that we come and congregate in our faith communities, the natural ways that we are just together. We were designed and created to be both in relationship with our Creator and also in relationship to each other. So this is a really, really, really hard time for bodies that were made that way. And so one of the things I share is that in my psychological discipline is that if you hold a hug I share it all the time. You hold a hug, a non-sexual embrace for longer than 10 seconds, then your body automatically releases oxytocin, which is the love hormone, or this feeling, this beautiful euphoric feeling of a pleasantness, of love. And we are deprived of that in these moments. And so we have to find other ways to hold ourselves and to be held, right? And that is what rather than figuring out how we can endanger ourselves to go back to a way that is still dangerous, we're still in a pandemic, don't let the folks feel you, right? But rather than looking back in a way that is not helpful, how can we in these moments hold each other? How can we embrace each other long enough that we actually feel held, that we take an exhale, that we take a deep, deep breath, this life-giving oxygen in our lungs, and exhale what we don't need, right? How do we do that? Find ways to do that, and God will make those ways possible if you are looking for them, right? So that's number one. And that there is still great love available. There is still justice available. There is still enough for everybody. I refuse, I said it before, I refuse to let these hateful folks change my orientation of love. I refuse to make these limited pea-brain minds get me to believe that I gotta hoard everything because it's not enough for everyone. I refuse to believe that justice is not possible. And so I will fight. It is my duty to fight for my freedom, right? It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love and support one another. We have nothing to lose but our chains. That's my favorite chant turned Asada words. So my closing words will be the very last paragraph that I wrote in the foreword, complete with my name. And I want y'all to do that for yourselves. Think about your name, think about the origins think about your genesis, think about your story, think about who you are purposed to be in this world, not just what you do, but just who you are. It says, these heartbeats within these pages are my tribe, y'all. And it is my hope and deep desire that they're expressions of lament. They're called to actively love ourselves and the least of these. They're challenged to consider an alternative perspective, and their examination of privilege, proximity to power, and sacrifice inspire you as they have inspired me to move in my faith. Signed that Vahisha Hasan, meaning life, noble prophet, and to make things better in Arabic, I am God's image. I am Violet's only begotten daughter. And I am Nicola's book baby mama. Thank you so much.
The Reverend Vahisha Hasan, we want to say thank you so much for joining us tonight I needed that word. I needed to be in your presence. You reminded me not just of hope, but you reminded me of the power of love. And in the midst of, these various different pandemics and crises that we're in, it is so easy to forget. And that is the trick of the enemy. That is the trick, right? To be deceptive, right? So thank you for reminding us to hope, to hold on to hope, to fight for hope, to fight and look for justice, to expect it, because that is the power of love, to expect it. Amen. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Listen, put the book up, Vahisha, so we can show folks, go get this book.
Everybody, and now you know why it's purple.
Buy it for a friend. Be a good friend, be a good neighbor, and buy this for a friend, right? Go to the websites. We have every last one of the links that we mentioned tonight in the comment sections. Thank you so much for joining us. We are back for our live stream conversations this Sunday at 2 p.m. Central Time. Join us as the Scarritt Bennett Center staff and some volunteers that will come and share some voting stories as we push civic engagement all of October. God bless you and keep you. And don't forget that while we sit in Saturday, Sunday is coming. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Amen.